Welcome to the Partial Historians.
We explore all the details of ancient Rome.
Everything from political scandals, the love affairs, the battles waged, and when citizens turn against each other. I'm Dr. Rad.
And I'm Dr. G. We consider Rome as the Romans saw it, by reading different authors from the ancient past and comparing their stories.
Join us as we trace the journey of Rome from the founding of the city. Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of The Partial Historians. I am one of your hosts, Dr. Rad.
And I am your other host, Dr. G. Woohoo!
Now, Dr. G, we are emerging from a very dark time in ancient Roman history. 392 BCE is not well known to the general public, but we discovered it was a year of a terrible pestilence where if you got sick, you might very well catch an itch that could cause you to scratch your way through your flesh to your very bones.
Horrifying, and the sort of thing that the Romans want you to forget, but we're going to remind you about every time it happens.
Ugh, honestly, I keep getting the shivers every time I think about it.
Disgusting. It has been a troublesome time for the Romans recently. Despite what appears to be the stellar victory over Veii and the Aequians being easy to conquer, but seemingly coming back every year anyway, like some kind of zombie enemy.
I was going to say like a jack-in-the-box.
Just when you think they're gone, they're back. And we are now heading squarely for what appears to be a much bigger disaster. I would say that this year is a lead-in to what is going to be an epic problem for Rome.
I would say so. I think we're going to do an episode on 391 BCE, which is this episode, and then it may take us like 5 or 6 episodes to get through the next lot.
Strap yourselves in, listeners. We're heading onto a bumpy road for the Romans.
Yeah, please be forewarned. 390 BCE will not be covered in a single episode.
It is unlikely. But even 391, I have to say, because it is a lead-in to what is going to happen, everybody is talking about it. And when I say everybody, I'm just going to give you my list of sources, not because I'm trying to show off, but because it's confusing in my head and I've got to have them all written down. There's the Fasti Capitolini, no surprises there. I also have Valerius Maximus, Plutarch's Life of Camillus, Cicero's On the House, Pliny's Natural History, Appian's Italic Wars, Dio Cassius, The Illustrious Men by the Unknown Author. Dionysius of Halicarnassus makes a reappearance, as does his epitomator, Xenarus, likewise Eutropius. Diodorus Siculus is back with his ongoing series, Meanwhile in Sicily. And this is way more sources than I usually have. Fortunately, most of them are saying very similar things. So I think that's going to be the crux of the issue when we get into it.
I was going to say, you're making me feel extremely sheepish because my list of sources is Livy.
And I'm not sad about that. I think Livy is providing us with the consistent narrative that is anchoring all of our episodes at the moment. So I think you're doing a very valuable and important job in tackling Livy, because it's providing the groundwork for all of the sort of chaotic bits and pieces that I have, little chips that I throw into the bowl at the party and hope will one day make something great.
Look, I'm not going to lie. When people think Fiona Radford, they think consistency.
See, there you go.
Yeah. All right. So, Dr. G, as you say, this will be a big one because it's the lead up to one of the biggest disasters in early Roman history, if not perhaps the biggest disaster in early Roman history. So, without further ado, let's try and leave plague behind if we can, because we've learnt nothing from annalistic history. It's that disease outbreaks only ever last 12 months exactly. They can't exceed that time period. It's impossible. Let's delve into 391 BCE.
Ah, 391. What a time, what a place.
Now, Dr. G, I would wager that the list of magistrates is going to take us a good 10 minutes, so let's get cracking.
All right. We have a return of the military tribunes with consular power.
Yes. Just reminding our listeners, apparently the reason for the switch from consuls back to military tribunes with consular power was because it's possible to have multiple military tribunes with consular power, as in more than two. And the theory is that if you have more than two, it's less likely that they'll all get gravely ill and scratch themselves to death.
It does also mean if you've got wars on many fronts, you're able to send a commander in every direction possible, which is exciting news. So we have 6 military tribunes with consular power, which is really reaching the upper threshold of what the Romans are capable of delivering in this magistracy. We have Lucius Lucretius Tricipitinus Flavus. Now, this guy was Suffolk consul in 393, so he was around a couple of years ago. And I did trip over his name, I think, in the previous episode where we talked about him. So I've really practiced for this
he's
one.
asking for it with that many syllables. Outrageous.
Exactly. Latin, what are you trying to do to me?
Exactly.
He is joined by Servilius Sulpicius Camerinus, also Suffolk consul in 393.
Gang back together. The gang's back together.
Yeah, they're like, we've served together before. It's going to be fine. We've got a guy who we're not sure of the praenomen. He could be a Lucius or he could be a Marcus, but he's definitely an Aemilius Mammacinus. This is his first time in the role. Congratulations.
But it won't be his last from the looks of things.
Certainly won't, but this is where it all begins. We also have Lucius Furius Magellanus.
Woo! The crack was well.
The Furii are back in town. He was previously consul in 413, 409, and also previously military tribune about 7 times.
Wow.
So he has a lot of experience under his belt. Who knows how many grey hairs? He is joined by Agrippa Furius Fusus, so from the same gens. And this is the only time that this guy appears in the Fasti. No other role, no other time. It's a special year. A small round of applause for Agrippa Furius Fusus.
I was going to say, we don't often get the name Agrippa mixed in with the Furii clan, I feel.
This is an odd situation. I don't think anybody is comfortable with it. Scholars have some questions.
Yeah, see, the only thing we've learned about Roman names is that they have a certain pattern to them. You just start to get a feel for it after talking about them this many times.
That's true. And definitely different genses have different preferences when it comes to their praenomens. So you start to see patterns there. I think the reason why he appears might become more clear as we get further down the list.
Sure.
The last military tribune with consular power is Gaius Aemilius Mammacinus. And if you thought I said his name already, you're almost right, because 2 of those 3 names appeared earlier in the list. So this guy is definitely part of the Aemilii gens and definitely the same branch of the family as the guy Lucius or Marcus Aemilius. They don't have the same father, they don't have the same grandfather, so they're slightly different branches of the family, but they're pretty closely connected, you would think.
I see a lot of patrician domination, Dr. G, and I'm not thrilled about it.
There is a lot of patricians in this list. All of them are patrician. And Gaius Aemilius Mammacinus was also previously military tribune in 394.
Okay.
So he's got a little bit of experience. So the only newcomer here is our Agrippa Furius Fusus. Now, things get more complicated as we move away from the military tribunes with consular power. And this is going to lead into, I think, some of the discussion we have about the source material. Because we have a tribune of the plebs listed, a guy called Lucius Appius. We also have a quaestor listed, Spurius Corvilius.
Mm-hmm.
We have the interreges who came up in the previous year. They're listed for this year as well. Marcus Furius Camillus, Publius Cornelius Scipio, and Lucius Valerius Potitus. And then we get into our legates / ambassadors.
Oh, the troublemakers, I like to call them, Dr. G.
And, well, listeners, if names are confusing for you, you're in the right spot because these guys are clearly all related, and it appears that they must all be brothers. From the names, the patterns of the names. We've got Quintus Fabius Ambustus. He is the son of Marcus, grandson of Quintus. You're like, okay. Then we have Caeso Fabius Ambustus, son of Marcus, grandson of Quintus. Then we have Numerus Fabius Ambustus, son of Marcus, grandson of Quintius.
Mm-hmm.
So these three, all related, all Fabian,
Fabulous
all
Fabian.
from fabulous Fabians, all from the Ambustus sub branch of the family.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we'll see what happens there.
Absolutely. It's going to be an interesting ride with these three, Dr. G, if they really did what they are accused of, but I mustn't get ahead of myself. Are you ready to dive into 391?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So, it was on a sunny summer's day in July, the first day of July, in fact, when our new military tribunes with consular power took over after that dreadful time of plague, Dr. G. Now, lest we forget, the Romans had made a declaration of war from their sickbeds, and now that they were feeling friskier, it's time to fulfill on that promise. Hence,
yes. Wow. We wouldn't want the gods to be disturbed, would we?
We most certainly would not. And so it's just as well we have so many military tribunes with consular power because they can be split up into pairs and sent off to conquer some people. So we have Lucretius and Aemilius being placed in charge of the war with Volsinii, one of the fabled Etruscan 12 cities, much further north than the Romans usually venture, but they started it. And then we have Sulpicius and Furius being placed in charge of the war with the city that we're presuming is not that far away from the Volsinii, the Sappinates, I'm going to call them. They decide to deal with Volsinii first, as it is a bigger place, as you might imagine, given that we actually know where this place was once upon a time. But again, bit of a snooze as far as military campaigns go, Dr. G. I don't know what is going on with these enemies of Rome, but apparently once the Romans launch their attack, the Volsinii, their line just breaks apart pretty much straight away. The Romans use their cavalry to cut them off, and the Volsinii, their cavalry wave the little white flag and defeated pretty quickly.
Well, all I can say is that from the way you've described them, they're far inside Etruscan territory. They've been living that soft Etrurian life, surrounded by their buddies, other friends. They haven't had to prep themselves for war. They haven't had to defend their city. And now all of a sudden, these angry little Romans turn up and like, "Rah!"
Exactly. Giving them a taste of their own medicine after they dared to invade Roman territory whilst the Romans were scratching themselves to death. Ugh. The smaller city that we don't really know where it was, the Sappinates, they saw how things worked out for the larger, presumably more prosperous neighbor city of Volsinii, and they decided, you know what? I don't think we want to fight the Romans.
Run away!
So they decide, much smarter, to hide behind their city walls and just brace themselves for an attack.
Shh, shh.
I would never know we're here. For us in here. Quick, get into the cupboard. Now, the Romans are on a high because presumably, you know how you feel after you've gotten over a serious illness. You know, they're just happy to be outside, quite frankly. They're skipping happily around, lootering and plundering their way through the fields of both the Volsinii and Sappinium, or whatever this place is called. Finally, the people of Volsinii get sick of this and say, you know what? Whatever we took from you in the previous year, we'll give it all back if you could just stop, all right? You already won the battle. Please, for the love of God, would you just put an end to this once and for all?
You see this sheaf of wheat? Have it back. Have it back.
Hang on a second. I can give it back to you, I swear. Just give me 1 second. Which actually,
delicious.
I think, gives credence to our theory that a lot of the warfare that is going on in this time period is really just people constantly swapping sandals.
Mm-hmm. Seems like it.
They also say that not only will they give back anything that they took in the previous year, they will provide the salaries of the soldiers that the Romans used in this little campaign, because after all, we are working under the pretense that there is such a thing as military pay at this moment in time. The Romans thought that sounds like a good deal, cha-ching, and they agree to a 20-year truce with these Etruscan rascals.
Okay, well, I mean, how do the Volsinii know that Romans are paying their troops? How do they know?
Presumably, whilst they were plundering the Roman fields, they got wind of this amazing innovation of the Romans.
I'm suspicious.
I am grasping at straws here, Dr. G. Just trying to make this work.
Livy, what are you trying to do to us? He really wants to embed this idea in his narrative. I can see where he's going. Very clever, Livy.
It's not that it's impossible that there's something being provided to the soldiers of Rome, but as you and I have talked about, there are just so many problems with the way that it is presented to us. And look, this isn't the first time this has happened, after all. Remember the whole Faliscan affair? They also agreed to pay the soldiers, apparently, after Camillus won them over with his sense of honour.
It does seem to be one of the innovations that has emerged in maybe the last 20 years of Roman history, which is that people are like, what if we just pay you to go away and stop fighting us? And people are like, you know what? I agree.
Yes. And it's something that will have a long history in many places, not just Rome. Now, Dr. G, this is where your knowledge of Roman religion is going to be counted upon.
Uh-oh.
Because back in Rome itself, a portent appears. A humble plebeian by the name of Marcus Caedicius. What an unfortunate name. He went and told some of the military tribunes with consular power that when he was in the Nova Via, or the Nova Via, for those that like the sound of a V, in the dead of night, he heard a voice. Now, presumably this voice was very clearly divine because he said it was even more distinct than a man's. I'm imagining booming. I'm imagining stereo surround sound. And it told him that he needed to inform the magistrates of Rome that the Gauls were coming. Dun, dun, dun.
Oh, no! The Gauls? How would they even... Who are the Gauls?
I'm not going to get into that right this second. But in Livy's time, there was apparently a small chapel of some kind where this portent took place, presumably to mark the occasion. And it was located just above the Temple of Vesta.
Very interesting.
I thought that might get your attention.
Look, I have a couple of Vesta things to mention in this episode, but that's not one of them. That's really interesting. I do have this story as well, related by Plutarch in his life of Camillus. And again, the guy's name is the same, Marcus Caedicius. And he hears this voice and he doesn't see the person, but it seems louder than a man's.
It's not a person, it's a god. I made that very clear.
Tell the magistrates that they must expect the Gauls. He goes to the tribunes apparently and tells them, and they laugh at him.
No, that's exactly what Livy says. Thinks that the magistrates couldn't have cared less, and oh, so shameful, Dr. G, but it's all because of his social class. They're like, you disgusting, stinky pleb. We're not going to pay attention to anything you say. Laughable. And then they point out that the Gauls are so far away, the Romans barely know anything about them. Ridiculous. Couldn't possibly be a concern. Mwahaha. Evil laughter. Mwahaha. Twirling of moustache. Mwahaha. Stroking of white cats.
Yeah, like we're not going to be worried about the chicken people. They live over the Alps. As far as we're aware, it's like a completely different continent.
Yeah, so they're very unconcerned. But this was obviously something that was marked later. This is apparently the only time when a voice like this was really heard before something disastrous happened for the Romans. So that's kind of interesting, I thought.
As an omen?
Yeah.
Or as a portent? Mm.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's the only time in Rome's history where they heard big, booming surround sound, James Earl Jones, Morgan Freeman style voices talking to them, but certainly as a warning, that something was coming. And so they did apparently mark out this site, and it was something set up to the cult of Aius Locutius or Locutius, but I don't believe that the exact site of this altar has been 100% nailed down.
Okay.
It is thought that this character of the lowly plebeian who gets laughed at is a later addition. I know you'll be shocked to hear that.
Oh, but in a way, it kind of makes sense. It was like, if we emphasize that this is a portent that is ignored by the powerful sections of Roman society, then you might then suggest that, well, the gods have realized that putting a message forward through the ears of a plebeian is worth nobody's time because the Romans don't get the message because they just laugh at the guy instead.
I know. And I love the fact that they set up this little thing to what seems to be a native god, which is the god of the speaking voice, basically.
Well, I think that's cool. I mean, the Romans do like things like that. They're like, we're not sure who to attribute this to.
Yeah.
And thus, it must be a new god that we're not aware of.
Yeah. Now, look, Dr. G, this is just the first of many times that we start to see why the Romans are about to face a terrible year in 390 BCE. And the overarching thing that unites all of these little incidents is that the Romans are brought down by their own arrogance. I mean, who could have seen that coming? I think you and I have spent a long time focusing on this very quality of the Romans.
Look, I'd like to say I'm shocked, but I can't even summon up shock.
Yeah. Now, I tell you what you are going to be shocked by, and that is the brevity of the next part of my account. The magistrates obviously have foolishly decided that they're going to ignore what is very obviously a message from the gods. And then, to make it even worse in Livy's vision of things, not only do they turn against divine aid, they turn against the only human in Rome who could possibly have helped them in their time of need. That's right, I'm talking about Marcus Furius Camillus.
Oh, Camillus, that guy.
Yep.
The old golden bowl stuff-up man.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Camillus is going through a tough time in 391 BCE, Dr. G. One of his young sons had suddenly and unexpectedly died. Perhaps scratched himself to death.
It's
Plague.
quite possible.
Yeah.
We certainly don't, or at least my sources don't provide the exact detail of what led to the death of the child, but given that we're in a situation contextually, which is like high levels of pestilence and disease, seems likely that the young and vulnerable would possibly be targeted and die.
Look, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say most likely plague. So Camillus is licking his wounds, dealing with his grief. It's not a great year for him. Unfortunately, it's exactly this moment that his enemies decide they're going to pounce. Camillus is a hero to the Romans, but as we have seen, it's not been all smooth sailing, and he's certainly ruffled some feathers along the way. Mostly plebeian feathers, Dr. G. Now, he seriously annoyed the plebeians because he was firmly against the idea of splitting Rome in two and sending half of the population to Veii. That didn't go down well because a lot of the plebs were in favor of that, particularly some of the tribunes of the plebs. They were definitely down for that. And he also did not win any friends with that whole, oh, hey, I forgot to tell you about this crazy promise that I made after you all got your cut of the spoils of Veii. Turns out I'm going to need some of that back.
Whoops.
Whatever went on with that whole thing, Camillus's glory has been somewhat tainted in the eyes of some of his fellow Romans. So this is where the tribune of the plebs enters the story. Lucius Appius. He indicts Camillus over the way he handled the spoils of Veii. Now, Livy really does not give me many details, and this is the shocking part. This is going to be all about the trial of Camillus and how it leads to his exile, and Livy handles it in just a couple of sentences.
Oh boy.
I know, you would think this would be a huge set piece in Livy's account, but I mentioned this to you before. He's trying to build up a bigger picture here. He wants symmetry in what he's dealing with here. And in order to achieve that symmetry, he just doesn't have the time or the inclination to talk much about this episode. So I don't get much detail, but what seems to be clear by piecing together multiple sources is that Camillus is essentially being accused perhaps of, it might have been something like maybe he didn't pay his fair share of the tithe, maybe, but it seems far more likely that he's being accused of something akin to sort of embezzling, like mishandling some of the booty, something along those lines. And the evidence, it's right there in plain sight, Dr. G. 2 huge bronze doors freshly installed on his house. The brazenness of this man. Now, you might say, well, surely the whole idea of taking stuff from Veii is that you can put it to some use. If you stole 2 huge bronze knockers, why not have them front and center?
Well, exactly.
But look, this seems to maybe be some of the evidence that they're pointing to. And so Camillus calls together his concilium, so group of friends that he trusts and family members, and wants to hear their take on what is going on, because obviously he is going to have to go through a trial. He's not really in the mood, the mindset, and he wants their advice. He doesn't perhaps hear what he was expecting to for a man with such a career behind him, because particularly some of his clients who are plebeians say, look, man, you're going down. It doesn't matter whether you're guilty or not guilty, you are going down. We can't really say that we're actually going to be voting to acquit you, because that would be career suicide. All we can say is that you'll probably get a slap on the wrist and a fine, and we'll help you to pay the fine. But we're still going to vote you guilty. It's going down. And Camillus decides that he should therefore just go into exile before the trial could take place. But before he leaves, he makes a very important vow to the gods. Again, he hasn't learned his lesson at all, Dr. G. He just keeps talking to them.
No!
He says to the gods, please, if you know that I am truly innocent, then make sure that my fellow Romans will regret bitterly that they have driven me away, and that they will want me to come home soon. And with that, he's off into the sunset, and in his absence, he is found guilty and fined 15,000 asses whilst he's in exile.
Goodness me, Camillus. He's a controversial character in some respects, I think, because he does demonstrate military prowess all the time. And yet his relationship with the people of Rome is tumultuous, and it's positioned this way in all of our source material. And this story about how Camillus gets into exile crops up in just about anybody who's anybody. This is why I have such a long list of sources. They're all giving a certain version of this tale.
Yes.
So Valerius Maximus positions this story in a section which he is entitled On Ingratitude. Delightful.
Subtle hint.
No, just there's an agenda here, just letting you know. And in this account, Camillus is accused by Apuleius, the tribune of the plebs, of embezzling spoils. And not just that, but there is a complaint made that there are 15,000 asses missing from the state treasury.
Ooh, extra detail. I like it.
Detail. The detail about him having lost a son is here in this particular version. This idea that Rome and Camillus are laden with calamities right now, and that he's condemned and sent into exile. That's the substance of Valerius Maximus. But this idea is not, he doesn't mention anything about these fancy bronze doors. He talks about embezzlement specifically, and that there's missing funds from the treasury. And Camillus is found to be wanting in this particular case.
And this is why the quaestors are involved.
It may be possible. There are different versions of this story, and in some cases it's the quaestor that brings the accusation. So then we get into Plutarch's life of Camillus. Obviously, Plutarch sees Camillus as heroic enough to deserve a life in the parallel lives. So he's seen in some ways as a moral exemplar. So that's important. So a lot of the framing of the things that go badly for Camillus are going to be lessons about how to do things better. He gets denounced to the citizens as a hater of the common people. Sounds very much like a tribune of the plebs move. And begrudging to the poor and the enjoyment of their rightful booty. So they have that situation in the background of this accusation being brought by Apuleius again. The charge is theft of Etruscan goods. And here the bronze doors do make a reappearance. The bronze doors belonging to the booty had been seen at his house. Not necessarily the front doors, but maybe he was keeping them inside.
Look, I may have got caught up in my description.
You see those doors over there? I'm going to do some improvements later. You know. And he does get together with his friends to discuss the case. And they say, we're not going to be able to help you with this. So everybody seems to be convinced that he's going down. Whether he's actually guilty or not is another matter entirely.
Hey, if the bronze doors fit.
Yeah. And they're like, well, you got the bronze doors in your house, man. What are you going to do? They say, though, that if he is punished with a fine, they'd help pay it. And that seems like a pretty generous offer, but it's the sort of thing that makes Camillus really mad, because that means that people don't believe him enough to defend him against these charges. They're just willing to help him out with the inevitable fine.
He's got bronze doors in his house. He doesn't need help with a fine. He needs faithful friends.
Exactly. He's like, well, that's not good enough. And it's like, that's not loyalty. You're not on my side. You're just going to help me out when I get the fine? What does that say about you? You don't believe my side of the story? I found the bronze doors. They were on the side of the road.
It was a council cleanup, I swear.
I got them off the back of the truck. What are you talking about?
Facebook Marketplace. I mean, everything's just so cheap on there.
Exactly. What was I supposed to do? It was a bargain. So he can't endure this. And he's determined to just depart the city and willfully goes into exile. So there's some stories say that he gets charged and he has to go into exile. Others suggest that he leaves before this trial takes place. So he's preemptively engaging with the whole situation. And Plutarch also gives us this detail about the prayer to the gods. And I'm just like, Camillus, my buddy.
I know. Stop it. Just stop talking to them. Talk to somebody else. Talk to your stuffed teddy bear.
How did this work out for you last time, man? Not well. Not well. You got into trouble with Apollo. You had to do the whole gold bowl debacle. You sent a ship around Italy. It didn't go well. There were pirates. And you're telling me you're going to pray to the gods again. All right.
Like, get a wife.
Well, I figure he must have one. He's losing children. But, you know, the guy can't take a hint. So it's like, he might be a great military general, but is he clever? No, he is not. He prays to the gods that if with no justice, but through the wantonness of the people and the abuse of the envious, he was now being driven from his country, the Romans might speedily repent and show to all men that they needed and longed for Camillus.
God, the ego on this guy.
You're going to want me. You're going to need me. You're going to ask me back.
I want you to want me.
Exactly. And then, to top it all off, Plutarch then begins the next paragraph with, after he had thus, like Achilles, invoked curses upon his fellow citizens, he removed himself from the city.
Now, that's quite an accusation, because Achilles is a very emotional, messed up guy who really screws up everybody's plans with his mopiness.
Yep. You can see where it might be going.
But look, I also see this as a convenient exunt, stage left, because what all of this means is that Camillus is conveniently not around when disaster strikes. Now, you might say, well, actually, Dr. Rad, that seems inconvenient. No, he is a hero, and it's convenient that he is not around when the disaster first strikes, and then he might just get to, I don't know, swoop in and save the day. We'll have to see.
Well, yes, exactly. So this is the kind of thing where Cicero's positioning of this situation is a handy way to get a lens on how Romans might be thinking about this kind of thing, because he brings up some great characters. In the same breath, Caeso Quintius, Marcus Furius Camillus, and Marcus Servilius Ahala. And we've had Ahala come across our table before.
Oh, and Caeso, yeah.
Guys who go out of their way to do things which are exceptional, outside of the bounds of the expected, but ultimately benefit the Roman people. But the Roman people can't see it for what it is and get annoyed at them. So it's like the Roman population is condemning the means by which great men achieve great things and punish them for not doing it in the proper way when greatness required moving outside of the rule set. And this is kind of the way that Cicero sees it, because obviously he's talking about himself in a classic Ciceronian fashion.
Camillus, Cicero, exactly the same.
Because he ultimately is bringing up Camillus to talk about the way that he had to leave Rome without any sentence being placed upon him. He had to go into a voluntary exile to be restored honorably later on, because people realized that he had done the right thing. And this is obviously a reference back to everything to do with the whole conspiracy that Cicero was a part of and bringing down in his view. So Camillus is one of these figures that gets positioned as a hero out of the patrician tradition.
Absolutely, yes. And there's a lot of details around this account which are questioned in modern times. The fine, the size of the fine, whether there was indeed a trial of this nature, it's all a bit questionable. However, it does seem likely that maybe Camillus wasn't in Rome after a certain point in 391 BCE or thereabouts, because as we've talked about, Roman dating's a little skew-if.
Well, it's also the situation where, depending on the sort of angle that you take with the scholarship, there is the argument that Camillus is not a real figure.
This is
that
true.
A lot of this story is completely made up.
I wasn't going to go down that path, Dr. G, today.
Or that there is an amalgamation of a variety of people into this singular story to give it more potency.
Absolutely. Many furiae.
Many.
What do you get when you combine many furiae?
So, as an additional detail, so we've got the idea of Spurius Corvilius, this quaestor, comes up.
Yeah.
Now, this is a very late source, so it can probably be dismissed as not quite as on the money as maybe some of the other stories. But Pliny the Elder in his Natural History talks about Corvilius, the quaestor, bringing the charges against Camillus, the accusation being about the doors in his house.
Mm-hmm.
But while I was reading that small paragraph, because this whole book 34 of the Natural History is about metals.
Oh, I was going to say, is it about doors? I was trying to think what the theme could be.
It's about metals.
Of course it's about metals.
And a mere 2 sentences above that, completely irrelevant to what we're talking about, but I'm going to mention it anyway because it involves the Temple of Vesta.
Ah.
So one of the things that's said is that the Temple of Vesta should be covered with a coating of Syracusan metal.
What does that mean? I don't know what that means.
Don't know what that means.
Okay.
I'm not sure. What metals do the Syracusans have?
I wouldn't know where to even start.
And where did this ordinance come from? And when was it applied? And does that mean that the temple was shiny on the outside? Because that's incredible. I'm living for that dream. Let us reconstruct the temple with a shiny exterior that blinds people in the summertime.
In the summertime.
My eyes.
All right, awesome. Okay, are we ready to advance with our tale?
Are we ready to advance with our tale? I mean, that is a great question. I mean, I don't think I have too many more things from this year. It's more variations on the same detail. So if you've got other things on this year, it's probably a good time to move to them because I'm willing to learn.
Okay. Well, let's throw ourselves back into the histrionic way that Livy is positioning Camillus' departure. Camillus is gone, and he was the only man who could have possibly prevented the capture of Rome, which is going to happen in 390 BCE. That's right. Another spoiler. It's really hard to tell the story of the preceding years without constantly giving away what's going to happen in 390 BCE. Yet more signs that trouble is a-brewing. Envoys arrive from Clusium.
Ah, yes, Clusium.
That's right. Clusium is in the Etrurian regions of Italy, and they are wanting help because they have encountered the Gauls, Dr. G. The Gauls.
Horrifying. What are the Gauls doing in Etruria?
Okay, well, this is where I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Gauls. It's actually occurred to me that this would be a good special episode for us, actually, because I do not know that much about the Gauls, apart from the fact that they are going to be running afoul of the Romans for hundreds of years, and it's not going to end well for them. Although they do put up a amazingly good fight against the Romans. The Gauls. This is a very generic term. Sometimes you will also see reference to the Celts as well as a particular brand of these people. To be honest, we wish we knew more about who these people that lived over the Alps really were. As far as we can tell, they were a more loosely organized peoples than the Romans, but they are widely spread out. So that is really no shock. I mean, again, if you look at the amount of territory Rome actually occupies at this moment in time, teeny tiny compared to the areas that these people are going to conquer and take over. But tribes do seem to be the way that they mostly organize themselves. Most of what we know about them at this moment in time comes from the people that they are fighting against, and this is part of our problem. We are constantly going to be battling the racism that tinges Greek and Roman accounts of what these people are up to, how their society is organized, all of that kind of stuff. But what does seem to make sense is that there is some contact between them and other peoples through trade. That seems legitimate. And that the dominant peoples in a Celtic/Gallic society would be a warrior elite.
You know, I have some details about why the Gauls are in Italy, if you're interested.
By all means, please.
So, Dionysius of Halicarnassus re-enters the narrative, my
friends.
Friends.
Nice to see you, Dionysius.
I'm glad to be here. So, it all starts, apparently, and I'm pretty sure this is a tall tale, but I like it, so I'm going to retell it anyway, so you can laugh along with me. Lucamo is a prince of the Etruscans.
Ah, yes, I know this story, but please continue.
He has a loyal man called Arians, who is acting as a guardian for his son. And Arians looks after Lucamo's son, even when Lucamo passes away, raises this child to power. You would think the child would be grateful. The child is not grateful. The child is a little power player.
The theme is ingratitude, Dr. G. The theme is ingratitude.
It certainly is. And as this kid grows up, he clamps eyes on Arians' young, beautiful wife and decides he wants her for his own. Arians is pretty unhappy with that situation. And not only does he believe that his wife has been corrupted, but he has seen this young man talking to his wife in public which means she is definitely not chaste anymore. It is impossible. If you've had a public conversation with a man, you must have also slept with him. That's the only explanation.
That's what I tell my stepdaughter.
Never talk to a man in public unless you've already slept with him, because everybody will assume that you have. So, I mean, the Romans and their ideas, and also the Etruscans and their ideas.
Yeah.
So anyway, Aruns gets his dander up about this, and he's deciding that he's going to leave Etruria. He's going to pack up his wagon, and he's going to go. So he takes everything that is needful for an important and long trip. He packs lots of wine, lots of olive oil, and many baskets of figs, and packs it all up in his wagons, and he heads out of Italy, all the way to Gaul. And that is where he meets the Gaulish people. And, you know, they're kind of like, what's in those wagons, buddy? And he's like, oh, look, sit down, hear my sorry tale, have a beverage, have some figs, have some wine.
Brought the popcorn, girl.
And the Gaulish people are flabbergasted. Their taste buds are exploding in this moment. They cannot believe it. They've been flavoring their food with rancid lard all this time.
And now they're tasting the rainbow.
And now they're like, olive oil? They've also been drinking bitter barley fermented beer, like the low of the low. And now they're tasting this delicious Italian wine. And they're like, oh my God, it's incredible. I just don't even know what to do with myself. And this fresh fruit, these figs, they're amazing. They're like, where did you get this stuff? And Aruns is like, well, I have great news for you. It's from Etruria.
It's actually not that far away, really.
Yeah, we're pretty close. And I can tell you that these people don't know how to defend themselves for shit. They are lazy, sitting around, making wine kind of people, and you could just walk right in there and take your share. And you know what the Gauls say? We're in.
Yeah, absolutely. Although it seems a bit harsh towards the Etruscans. They seem pretty dominant for quite some time.
Aruns doesn't think so, and his heart has been broken, so he does not care. Is he telling the whole truth to the Gaulish people? Maybe not. Is he worried about the outcome? Probably not. But we do have our first example in all of recorded history of the French now being jealous of the Italians and wanting what the Italians have for themselves. And this is going to set up a narrative that will last thousands and thousands of years.
Wow. Well, Livy actually does mention that story as well. However, he does cast a little bit of doubt on it by saying, look, I'm not going to contradict the story. Which to me kind of indicates that he's thought about it and thought, is this realistic? I don't know. He says that it's generally agreed, and I'm quoting my translation there, that the Gauls who attacked Clusium were not the first Gauls to cross over the Alps. And I'm kind of like, well, duh, Livy. Because there's a lot of questions in this story. First of all, Clusium. Clusium of all places, Dr. G. It would seem that perhaps this particular location might have been decided upon because later on, the Romans and Clusium will have some affairs. But right now, it's quite far away. Does it make sense as a place for the Gauls to be attacking? We can't be certain. There is certainly zero archaeological evidence to support contact between the Gauls and Clusium of all places.
And also the idea that the Romans have an alliance with Clusium, which is one of the other pieces of information that's bandied about. And it's like, the Romans haven't ventured this far north. They would have had to skip over a whole bunch of Etruscan places in order to get to Clusium to be like, let's be friends. And for the Clusians to agree and be like, sure.
Exactly, yes. Not a lot of this makes sense.
You Latins from a little backwater, why not?
What we can say is that Gauls/Celts, whatever you want to call them, Celts even, they probably were migrating because they were after the usual stuff. Land, well, and stuff, really. And by stuff, I mean...
Scoundrels, really.
Yeah, resources, animals, fruits, wine, whatever is going. And it could be because they need more space. Maybe they've had a bit of a population boom, perhaps. We're not really sure. But there are waves, it would seem, of tribes sort of coming over. And gradually they're setting themselves up in the sort of northeast of Italy, sort of Po Valley area. And this would be something that would be interesting to Livy because, lest we forget, he is from Padua, which is in Cisalpine Gaul. Yes, exactly.
Look at him go.
I know. And this is one of my funnest little things to remember about Latin because we know I don't understand Latin. But Cisalpine Gaul literally means Gaul this side of the Alps as opposed to Transalpine Gaul, Gaul that side of the Alps.
Yes. Never listen to people who tell you that cis and trans have not been in use for thousands of years because they have.
Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly. So we do have these waves of migration happening. And as you can imagine, that does lead to conflict between the people that are there. And some of the people that are there are Etruscans. We do have some archaeological evidence showing the conflict between Etruscans and Celts. There are apparently, and I'm quoting my source here, which is Gary Forsyth's book, horseshoe-shaped sandstone tombstones from the Etruscan community of Felsina, dating to the early 4th century BCE, where you may see a noble Etruscan warrior on horseback doing battle with a nude Celtic dude on foot.
Well, there you go.
So we're going to see increasing influence. And I actually did not know this. I can't believe I didn't know this. But a lot of the place names in this part of Italy actually come from the Celtic tribes and whatnot that set themselves up here. Like Bologna. I did not know that. I should have known that, but I didn't.
Oh, look. Yep, the north of Italy. It is different from other parts of Italy. Yeah. There's different influences going on.
Now, as you might imagine, herein lies our difficulty, right? Because we have almost nothing from the Etruscans in terms of their writing. Most of what we have that sort of tells their history is, in fact, archaeological. Their writing doesn't really tell like narrative histories, and it's very, very limited. And so we don't get much. And then, of course, the other people, they're going to come into contact with the Greeks and the Romans, as I mentioned before. And they don't necessarily have the understanding necessary, particularly at this early time, to understand all the subtle nuances between these different Celtic groups of people and tribes that they might be encountering. They do get to know some of the names of these different groups and that sort of thing. But as for giving us, a nuanced portrayal of who these people are, I'm afraid we just don't have it, Dr. G.
Oh, sigh.
I know. We might be wondering, because Livy actually does something interesting here. He actually gives quite a lot of detail, though, about the history of the contact and where these people are coming from. And I have to say, it's unlike anything I have read in Livy so far. It actually does remind you a lot of the kind of stuff that Herodotus does, and that might be what he's imitating here.
Interesting. He's getting into a bit of an ethnography, is he?
A little bit, yeah. He goes on this little... he doesn't often do that. Like, he might go into a bit of a backstory, but as you know, Livy's not always one for detail. He sometimes skims through things very quickly. He talks about the fact that from his point of view, from his sources, what are those sources? Not really sure. We think they might be Greek. Not really convinced. Apparently, there are a couple of potentials, like maybe some of Varro's writing and a person called Timagenes, but we're not really sure. Seemingly, he actually was probably using more Greek sources than Varro, but anyway. He says that 200 years passed between the initial crossing of the Gauls into, the north of Italy and their attack on Clusium, which is happening right now in this very year. And that the people from Clusium, the Clusinii, which sounds a bit like fangirls of George Clooney, were not the first Etruscans who had had to fight the Gauls, that there had been lots of conflict going on between the people of this region. And this is where we get some of the classic racist-style remarks, I suppose, from Livy. He talks about certain tribes having, incredible savagery, and we're going to see constant references to the temper of these particular people. What we think is actually happening is that these groups that are migrating into Italy, probably coming via Switzerland and maybe South Germany, and not actually possibly Gaul itself.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the stories that Livy relates is that during the reign of Tarquinius Priscus, the Celts one of three divisions of the Gaulish people, were being ruled by another tribe, and I'm going to butcher this pronunciation, I apologize. The Bituriges? The Bituriges.
The Bitter.
The Bituriges, yeah. The Bituriges, perhaps. The Bituriges. And it's from this tribe that a king was given to the Celts. This man's name was Ambigatus. Ambigatus.
Very ambiguous of him.
I know. He was a man of considerable talent, but also had a lot of good luck, which meant that he became quite a distinguished leader, and the Gauls became extremely prosperous under his rule. They had just so much corn and so many babies being born. I mean, they were Scrooge McDucking themselves all over the place. They were just diving into their pits of money.
It's a tough life, but someone's got to live it.
As Ambigatas becomes old, he didn't want to see his kingdom remain so large because that would be crazy. It's too much prosperity. Got to dish it out a little bit. So instead, he decided to send his nephews via his sister, Belovisus and Segovisus, they're the names I'm going for, I apologize for my pronunciation, on a quest to find new homes which could be given to them by the gods, and oh boy, Dr. G, these nephews were up for the task. Now, the king assures his nephews that they're going to be taking a large number of followers with them so that no one's going to be able to stand in their way. Now, this sounds kind of crazy. On what planet have you ever heard of someone being like, we're just too prosperous? We're going to share this prosperity around in this manner.
It sounds like somebody having some difficulties with some nephews and being like, you know what, I'm going to arm them up and send them in opposite directions and then they're going to leave me alone.
Possibly, or it's just a really weird explanation for the fact that actually they need more land, they need more territory, and they need to conquer it. So they're given various areas where they're going to, like, it's just divvied up by lot, like where they're going to go. And it is Segovisus who is assigned the Hercynian Highlands, which is the upland districts of South Germany, including places now known as like the Black Forest, Bohemia, and so on. And Belovisus, he is directed by the gods straight into Italy.
Da, 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 da.
Now, he is leading extra members from the tribes, the Bituriges, the Arverni, the Senones, the Hedui, the Ambari, the Carnutes, and the Orlurci. I'm sure I just mispronounced a whole lot of Celtic names there. And they have a mixture of infantry and cavalry with them. And they, of course, then have to come across the difficulty of how are they going to get across the Alps.
I'd recommend elephants.
The little bit before that time, and I don't think they've packed any elephants, unfortunately. So they have some difficulties. They're a bit hesitant. They're kind of intimidated by the sight of the Alps, and I do understand where they're coming from. The Alps are pretty big. So it's superstition that apparently makes them pause at this point in time. The exact details of their crossing, I'm not even going to go into it because, again, it seems like Livy probably has got it wrong in terms of what was possible, etc., at this point in time. But once we have these guys across the Alps, because they do indeed make it across, they are soon followed by other Gauls who start setting themselves up in various places in the north of Italy. So it's a waterfall, Dr. G. It's just being unleashed.
Yeah, they found a path and then they told everybody about it. And now everybody's on the other side of the mountains.
Yep, exactly. We're told that it's the Senones who seem to be the last to migrate. And the reason why I'm mentioning them is that Livy thinks it's people from this tribe that went to Clusium and then eventually will go on to Rome. Spoilers again. So the men of Clusium rock up to Rome because they're completely freaked out by this attack by the, presumably, Senones group of the Celts/Gauls. And it's not just because it's an attack. It's also because they're really strange people with crazy weapons that the people of Clusium have apparently never seen, even though they're kind of in this area of Italy and the Gauls have been there for a while, I think. So I question this, Dr. G, but let's just move on with our narrative.
You say move on, but I'm not sure that I can. What kind of weapons do these people have that they've never seen before?
They just seem strange. I mean, I think we can definitely question Livy's narrative here, because if the Gauls have been migrating for like the last 100 years or so, would there be weapons that the people of Clusium haven't seen? Are the Celtic weapons even that different from the kinds of weapons that the Romans would use? These are all legitimate questions, Dr. G.
I've never seen that handle before. Barbarians.
You call that a knife?
Why, exactly.
Yeah. So, there's much talk about the disruption that is happening in this part of Italy at this point in time. And you might be wondering, Dr. G, why on earth would the people of Clusium turn to Rome, of all people, for help in their time of need? Because there is no alliance between any people in Etruria and the Romans at this moment in time. About the only thing that the men of Clusium have to recommend themselves is the fact that they did not side with Veii during Rome's recent war with Veii.
Look, that doesn't score them big points, surely.
Well, nobody did. Nobody in Etruria did. That was kind of the point, wasn't it? But anyway, now they're seeking help from the Roman Senate. The Roman Senate don't want to rush into anything here for exactly that reason. There is no formal alliance here. They don't really see why they should be helping the people of Clusium per se. Clusium is very far to the north, after all. However, they do agree to offer a limited kind of assistance. And this is where our ambassadors come in, Dr. G. The 3 sons of Marcus, Fabius, and Bustus are dispatched as ambassadors to Gaul and tell them off officially in the name of Rome.
Ah, yes. Well, there's nothing like an official Roman telling off, is there? And
Exactly.
who better than the fabulous Fabii?
Precisely. They're going to dazzle the Celts with their fabulousness. So when they arrive, they say, "How dare you pick on friends of Rome, particularly this group of people in Clusium, who have done nothing to provoke you, Celtish people? The Romans do not want war." Dr. G, this is what they tell the Senones.
Well,
Especially,
that's a change of events, isn't it? Somebody should interrogate this more closely.
I think it's more they don't want war with this particular group of people because they don't even know who they are.
Yes, it's always better to go to war with your friends, people that you know.
Precisely. So they say, look, you're strangers to us. We don't know much about you. We would rather be on friendly terms with you, Gauls/Celts/Senones. And even though the response to this would kind of make sense sitting in 391, I would like to leave it on a bit of a cliffhanger there, Dr. G. But yes, this is what we've got. We've got Romans talking to the Celts at this moment on behalf of their kind of friends, not friends, frenemies from Clusium. And I'm going to get into exactly how this exchange plays out, I think, next time.
Oh, well, I look forward to finding out what happens next.
One thing I can say is that Livy is probably relying on a source that relied on Fabius Pictor.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes things more interesting. No
It
wonder
does.
there's so many Fabii involved.
Well, that's exactly it. It's probably the case that a lot of the stuff that we're dealing with at this point in time, as it has been for quite some time, is drawing on like family histories and family traditions that have been passed down. And if those people go on to be some of the source material that Livy is using, well, some of their relatives get a spotlight thrust upon them.
Well. Okay. A point of tension we have reached. Meanwhile, in Sicily, I will try to cover this quickly, but there are some pretty fun things that are happening in Sicily at this point in time, according to Diodorus Siculus. He gets 3 of the names of the military tribunes correct, and 1 of them terribly wrong, and 2 not mentioned at all. But be that as it may, what's going on with the tyrant of Syracuse, Dionysius? He's taken his army to Hipponium, which is a colony of the Locrian people. It's in Calabria, and he's hanging out there partly because he is in favor with the Locrians. And by in favor with the Locrians, he likes them because they agreed to his marriage suggestion, where the Rhegians refused.
Finally, somebody sees sense.
They were like, sure, you can marry one of the nice girls. And he was like, you're my favorite people in southern Italy. I'm going to do things for you. So now when he starts taking over things, sometimes he gives a bit of the land to the Locrians, being like, you guys, here's a gift. And they're like, cheers, thanks. I'm sure that's making the Locrians very popular with all of their neighbours. Meanwhile, the Rhegians and their situation, because that's made him really angry, he's still stewing over that. So he decides that what better than to attack them directly? That's really what needs to happen now. And he builds up to it with a sort of a sneaky, I'm just putting some supplies here. Don't worry about it. We're going to be moving on shortly. And the Rhegians, for some reason, are like, okay, it's a transportation mover. That's fine.
It sounds like the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Well, I mean, the Rhegians, maybe they should have realized. It gets to the point where so many supplies are building up outside of their city. They're like, excuse me, you said you were moving on. He's like, well, I'm not moving on. It's a siege. They're like, oh no.
Wow, a surprise siege.
Well, yeah, one that they didn't see coming for a little while, apparently. Even though all the stuff was arriving.
I was going to say, yeah.
Another siege engine. That's curious. So,
all these weapons, food supplies. What's going on?
Not smart, guys. Not smart.
It's not my birthday for another several months.
Yeah. What is this? The Trojan War? Anyway, so aside from the Rhegian silliness in this moment, they decide once they realize it is a siege and the target is indeed them, they wheel themselves into action. They sign up a guy called Photon as their general.
Once again, it could be a character in the Marvel universe. What is going on?
I think they got the Greek from these guys, so they went with it. And he's well organized, and he decides that they're going to attack the siege engines. That's the first plan. And it's a good plan. They burn a whole bunch of the siege equipment. And this means that they're fighting outside of the walls, which also means that they're engaging with the Sicilian Greeks. Dionysius himself gets struck by a lance in the groin. Apparently, it's more common than you'd think, because we've had other characters in history so far this has happened to. It's a weak spot, apparently.
Well, yeah, I mean, to be fair, what I would say to most people out there, if attacked by a man, is kick him in the crotch and run. If I had a lance, I'd probably use that too.
Exactly. Go for the soft spot.
Yeah.
So he barely escapes death, apparently, and has difficulty recovering from this wound.
Well, yeah.
Fair enough. It hurts a lot.
Yeah. A lot of vasectomy.
Nevertheless, the siege continues.
Mm-hmm.
So, I imagine the case being that Dionysius, the tyrant, is sort of wheeled off to a tent nearby and is lying there sort of trying to recover and is still like, continue the siege. So he's still in charge. He's still around. The siege continues to happen. Meanwhile, there's also the Olympic Games happening.
Of course.
It's a big year. And Dionysius decides to send a team to the Olympic Games. He's like, I'm Greek, I'm allowed to go. And he's very keen to have some professional poets recite his poetry. He considers himself a poet.
Oh, of course he does. Of course he does. It just fits with the whole tyrant modus operandi, doesn't it? To write terrible poetry and force other people to listen to it.
The entitlement does not end. He was madly addicted to poetry. So the trouble is that he sends his professional reciters of poetry to the Olympic Games, and people come along to listen because they're like, oh, well, let's see what he's got to offer. And then they hear the verse, and the verse is so bad that they start to laugh.
I'm really pleased to hear that, actually. I'm actually getting strong vibes from, like, the Barbie movie, like, when they're all sitting around the fireplace singing Matchbox 20.
So people at the Olympic Games are laughing at Dionysius's poetry. It doesn't matter that it's being recited by professionals. That's not enough to cover up the inferior quality of the verse itself.
Ouch.
Even worse, he has charioteer teams involved that get involved in crashes, so they get eliminated from the competition. So that's a blow.
That's fairly common, though, isn't it?
But not only that, other members of the team that get through that whole process, there's a shipwreck on the way home. So he loses a whole bunch of his Olympic team in the return journey as well.
Nobody talks about this in the history of the Olympics.
Exactly. Everyone's just like, turn up, do the Olympics, win a wreath, have a good time.
We talk about Munich, we talk about all this other stuff, but where is the shipwreck of 391 approximately?
Exactly. The shipwreck, and it's devastating because not only is Dionysius dealing with the fact that he's lost a whole bunch of his team in the return journey, but the ones who managed to survive to get home start spreading the stories about his terrible poetry and how it was received. They're like, because that's the story of the Olympics for them. And he catches wind of this and he's so annoyed and so frustrated. You can just imagine he's trying to sit up, but he's got this groin wound. He's like, but my art, my poetry, my leg, my soft parts.
There once was a tyrant from Syracuse.
Yes, exactly.
Who really, really didn't like to lose.
It's that kind of poetry. He invented the limerick and nobody appreciated it. It was like so frustrating for him. Anyway, the good news is that he has his advisors who managed to persuade him that he is actually the object of envy, and people are laughing at him because they're jealous of his talents.
Of course. Naturally.
And so the key thing is to not give up and to persist with your art until eventually that envy transforms into admiration. So his devotion to his writing is not subdued by this devastating Olympic Games. And I imagine, he's in pain. He's probably going back to writing his poetry as well. Now, the other small little detail that Diodorus Siculus provides about this year, 391, is that the Romans fight a battle at Dyrrhachium.
Ooh.
Dyrrhachium, yes. I tried to find Dyrrhachium. We don't know where Dyrrhachium was. It feels like another made-up name by Diodorus Siculus.
I was going to say, is it because it doesn't exist?
Well, I sometimes wonder whether he's misreading a source that he's looking at when it's written down, or that somebody has told him a piece of information and he's tried to remember it orally and then misspelt it, and somehow the misspelling has come into it, because he says it's with the Volscians, and that would not be out of keeping with where the Romans are at right now.
Sure.
Like, the Volscians are far closer than the Etruscans in the north, or and even the Aequii, things like that, the Volsinii. And he says that the Romans slew a great number of the enemy, which is also the kind of thing that's relatively believable for the Romans in this time period.
It is, but Dr. G, this is not where I'm at in my narrative. My narrative is telling me that the Romans are being given sign after sign, and they keep really ticking off the gods in return.
Well, but I mean, the good news is that we've got 6 military tribunes with consular power this year, and one of them could be going against the Volscians.
That's true. Not all of them have been given a specific campaign.
And that is my detail for 391.
Oh, well, Dr. G, I think that means it is time for the partial pick. Oh, that was a long episode, Igor. Let's get into it. What is the partial pick all about, Dr. G?
Ooh, the partial pick, where we rate Rome against her own standards, with a possibility of 50 golden eagles, 10 across 5 categories. The first category is military clout.
Well.
The Romans fought a battle at Jerusalem with the Volscians.
I'm just thinking hard. I'm not really feeling a lot of military clout coming out of this year. It's really a lot more about the Gauls. There's a lot of detail about tribes going here and there.
Yeah, Livy got really waylaid by the detail, didn't he?
He did, but we do have the conflict with Volsinii. We do. And potentially the other place that just hid behind their walls.
Don't mind if I do.
Yeah, we do have a little bit of conflict. So I guess maybe like a 3 or 4 again? I don't know.
Look, I think we've got even less detail than we had for the previous year, so maybe a 3.
Yeah, I'm just looking at my detail again. It really isn't a lot. At least there's a bit more strategy here. The Romans used their cavalry to cut off their cavalry.
Ooh.
And they surrendered. And then the other people were too scared. And then they plundered. There is a bit more detail. No, you know what? 4. Because they get the salaries paid for.
Oh, yeah, that's a bit fancy, isn't it?
It is a little bit. I think they deserve a 4 for that. And a 20-year truce.
Well, let's save that for diplomacy, shall we?
No, I know, but I just mean like militarily. It says something. I feel it does.
All right, a 4.
Okay, a 4.
The second category is diplomacy.
Okay, well, they do agree on a peace settlement, which seemingly makes them like BFFs with the Etruscans all of a sudden. And they do send ambassadors to just talk to the Gauls. That's probably not entirely true. It seems like the earliest versions of this story had 2 unnamed ambassadors going to Clusium, and they weren't going there as ambassadors, they were going there to spy. So...
Well, that sounds almost more likely. But from a diplomatic perspective, sending ambassadors somewhere, that's diplomacy.
Yeah,
getting a truce fixed up, that's diplomacy.
Yep. All right. So what are we going to give them? Like a 3?
Sure.
Okay. That's our next category.
Expansion.
Not really. They're traveling, but they're not expanding.
They're expanding their horizons.
They are. They're definitely looking much further north than they ever have before, but their gaze is directed there by others.
All right. That's a 0.
Yeah.
The 4th category is virtus.
Not particularly, I would say. It's a pretty grim year, actually. Got military tribunes laughing in the face of poor little plebeians who've just heard God speak directly to them. Sorry.
Yeah.
A God speak directly to them.
I mean, could he just be mad?
Mad as a hatter, they say.
All right. No virtus. And finally, the citizen score.
Well, there certainly is a sense of lingering disease in the air. That's not great. We've got war with the Volsinii and another place, maybe. But it's victorious.
In both cases, it seems that Rome is posting a victory.
Yeah, is that good news? Because they're still fighting. They're still out there in the field.
Well, but they're also not saying that there's been substantial losses. So as far as battles go...
Yeah, if anything, they're indicating the opposite, I would say.
So it's probably as good as it can be for when you're being very aggressive.
It's making me realize just how much Livy spends time talking about the Gauls. I have almost nothing about what's actually happening in Rome. It's all about the Gauls and their various waves of migration.
And then these guys came over the Alps, and then these
That is
guys...
literally what he does. He's seriously invoking Herodotus. There is such a long passage where he talks about, and then these guys, and then these guys, and then these guys encounter these guys, and then they take this pass, and they take that pass, and they go over here, and they encounter these people. Oh, honestly, I couldn't keep it all straight.
On that account, I can say it must be a great time for the Roman citizens because they're not getting dragged into anything yet. They're just sort of hanging around at Rome being like, didn't know the Gauls existed.
That's pretty much it. Never loved you. But the fact that the Etruscans are worried by these people, I don't know. Okay.
Well, it's not having a direct impact on Roman citizens, though.
Not yet, but it will. Fairly dramatically, and soon.
Well, yes. But, that's a trouble for next
That's
year.
a 390 Roman problem.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. All right, so citizen score, what are we saying then? Is it like a 5? Because
I suppose it's not too bad.
Yeah, but there is that playground. Maybe a 4. And Camillus is gone, which they might be happy about.
Look, I think that's a win. It's back to a 5.
Actually, that's true. Is Camillus being gone like a bit of a victory for them?
I think so. That's definitely what they wanted.
Well, I mean, some of them, not all of them. All right. So are we going to say a 5? Okay. All right. In that case, Dr. G, it is a total of 12 golden eagles for Rome. I don't know why I just said it like that. 12 golden eagles for Rome.
Huzzah. Well, they did better than the year before. Let's see if they can keep it up.
I almost guarantee you that they won't.
Just, let's be optimistic. People talk about 390 as being a terrible time, but we don't know yet because we haven't done it.
That's right. I mean, Gallic sack. That could just mean
Santa Claus.
A tribal bag of some sort.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They've turned up with the Christmas presents. That's delightful.
Exactly. It's like the Celtic version of Santa Claus.
Exactly.
All right, Dr. G. Well, I look forward to spending presumably at least 3 episodes talking about 390 BCE with you.
Oh, I look forward to it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Partial Historians. You can find our sources, sound credits, and an automated transcript in our show notes. Our music is by Bettina Joy de Guzman. The Partial Historians is part of the Memory Collective, creators and educators dedicated to sharing knowledge that is accessible, contextualized, socially conscious, and inclusive. To find more from the Memory Collective, head to collectivemem.com. You too can support our show and help us to produce more fascinating content about the ancient world by supporting us on Ko-Fi or by becoming a Patreon. In return, you receive exclusive early access to our special episodes and ad-free content. Today, we would like to send a special shout out to someone who always buys us a coffee on Ko-Fi, Kent Johnson. However, if your pockets are a bit light on the denarii, please just tell someone about the show or give us a 5-star review. Until next time, we are yours in ancient Rome.